Hello. A little uncomfortable talking to myself like this. Normally, when I talk, I have stream chat open and it feels like a two-way communication, sort of. But anyways, I wanted to record some videos where I commentate on Crimson Eagle 3. This is really an idea that I've had for a while. To just go through the game and talk about the design philosophy behind it, and talk about what the process was like making it, and I don't know, like random fun facts about the development and ideas behind stuff. So that's the plan. I'm not gonna play through it. Like, I'm not gonna beat everything. I'm gonna skip through it in debug mode. But I really wanted to just go back and reminisce over this game, and yeah, what it was like making it and what it has been since. So first off, I should say a couple words about the title screen. It's pretty noteworthy part of the game, in my opinion. So the idea for this title screen was an idea I had, and it's a pretty, like, I guess it's like a trope or something, with you're standing in front of this bridge and there's a mountain. But anyways, I drew a really basic stick figure concept art of this. And then Zero-G joined an art channel on Discord, where we asked people to submit their own iterations of this. And we got, like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 submissions, I think. So just like basic drawings where we got a general idea of people's style. And then eventually we went with a guy who goes by Leo Violet. So he had draw like a concept art based on the one that I have drawn. And we commissioned him, so we paid him money. And over a couple of weeks, it probably didn't take him a couple of weeks, but a couple of weeks later, we received this title screen, which is like, it's just insanely good by fangame standards. I think it's safe to say. So I'm very satisfied with it. I know Zero is very satisfied with it as well. But it's important to me, and the idea behind this, and the general vibe or mood that I wanted to convey with this title screen, was a more menacing and ominous feeling. So I want you to feel as a player that you're small, that you're standing in front of some task or trial that is gonna be really hard to conquer. And I also think that the style of this title screen, if you compare it to the style of the title screen, hold on, so if you compare this to the CN2 title screen, there's a very like noticeable difference in tone. So this one is much darker, whereas the CN2 one is like kind of cartoony, sort of more easygoing, I suppose, more fun. And I think that really reflects how I view these games and what I wanted to accomplish with these games. Because CN2, from like a game development standpoint, it was like fun. That was like the guiding word, the guiding principle was that I wanted to make a game that was as fun as possible to play. And to some people this might sound weird, but like that's really not what I was going with for CN3. Like I'm happy if it's fun. I know a lot of people found it fun. I find it fun, but it's just not that one, like the holy grail. It's not the lead value, or the primary value, I should say, that I wanted to achieve. So this is a more serious game, and I'll talk more about what I actually wanted to make with this game, what was important to me. But let's start a new file and go through the cornfield. Yes. So this is obviously like anything else that in this game that looks really good. It's made by Plasma. So, but the idea for this was mine, and well, the cornfield thing has been like a running. I want to avoid saying running joke, but it's been like a running thing with throughout the Crimson games or the Crimson Needle games. So in Crimson Needle 1, I think that the folder for the game was called "I Want to Traverse the Nebraskan Cornfield," and then in CN2 we had a fake title screen when you started the game, which was also called "I Want to Traverse the Nebraskan Cornfield." So this is like sort of bringing closure to that gag. It's like, oh, you're actually walking through, and presumably a Nebraskan cornfield here. But really, what I wanted, like, I just wanted like a really tranquil, solemn, almost a little melancholic intro. And like to me, this is just. I mean, I don't see why anyone will find this funny, but it was never meant to be like a joke. I feel like this is just a really nice, relaxing way to start the game off. And it's also along with this screen right here. It's a way to just build suspense. So like, because a lot of people started this game with a lot of expectations and a lot of excitement. This is like I'm teasing the player a little here, like, oh, well, first you have to, you know, go up this agonizingly slow lift before you can actually reach the game, and you don't know what's coming, so you'll probably think a lot about what's coming up. All right, so gonna enter floor 1 here, and before I talk about these floors, so there are 30 floors to start the game off, floor 1 through 30. Before I talk about those individually and the stages individually, I kind of want to say something about, or talk a little bit about the place that these 30 floors have in the game. Like, what purpose do these floors fill? Why are they here? Why isn't the whole game just floor 31? Or the other way around, why isn't the game just like a regular standard 100 floor game? So I mean a natural assumption would be that when you make a game, like most games, you make them chronologically. So maybe people think that, oh well, I made floor 1 and then I made floor 2 and then all the way up to 30, and then at 30 like maybe I got bored and I started, you know, doing a little bit of gimmicks, and then eventually it turned into something else. But that's just that's just not the case. So actually, the first thing I made for this game were some stages in floor 31, and I'm not gonna talk about how the game started out yet. I'm gonna talk about that in a later stage. But the first thing I made was floor 31, certain stages of it, not even the hub, just individual stages. And then I had the idea of making the hub, and then later on I had the idea of having 10 floors, so like the 10 final challenges after floor 31, which was not floor 31 at the time, by the way, it's just the hub. And then those final 10 floors turned into 20 floors, and then eventually they turned into 30 floors. So that's the whole of this game. So you start out with 30 floors, and then you do the main hub, floor 31, and then you have another 30 floors after that. So at what point then did I decide to make these initial floors, and what was my reasoning behind it? So the reasoning behind it, there was one really obvious reason why I had to make these floors, and that was that the difficulty curve, because initially you started the game at 31, and you know that the hub is pretty easy, but like as soon as you would get into a stage, it would just skyrocket. And I felt like, you know, I'm not much of a difficulty curve guy, but like if the game starts out and it just immediately pummels you with really hard stuff, then you're probably not going to enjoy that game. So I want the player to get invested before they face the hardest challenges. Like just doing some, like say a random, like I want to make a map that's really difficult. Like most people don't have the patience for that, and they don't have the interest in doing that. It's not really very rewarding. But when you put it in the context of a big game, it is very rewarding because you're invested in the game. You want to see what comes next, and you feel like you don't want to give up all that you've put in by getting there. So that's the idea, anyways. That these first 30 floors is a way to get the player invested. Another reason is that I think sort of the impact of discovering the scope of 31 would be diminished if that was like the whole game, or like where the game started. Because right now, I think that's probably the coolest part of this entire game, is like actually reaching 31 for the first time, and this worked better at the release of the game when people didn't know, but like when people actually discovered that, oh, like this is not what I expected at all. And then the more you explore it, the more you realize that it's absolutely massive. And I think if the game started there, that effect would not be as substantial, probably. And then a third reason for making these first 30 floors is actually that I just didn't want to disappoint people. Because most people, like very likely, came into this game with the expectation that it was going to be just a traditional 100 floor game in the vein of CN2. Like maybe they thought I'd sort of spice it up with a couple more gimmicks, which I've started making some games with gimmicks since CN2. So I figured that it's like a bit of fan service almost. Just having these first 30 floors, which are pretty much like they're pretty much like CN2. I think they're better than anything in CN2. Just about all of them. I think I've actually improved a lot as a needle designer since then. But essentially, like they're just pretty standard needle. But yeah, and I don't want to make it sound like I didn't want to make these floors. Like I enjoyed making them. I'm very happy with them. But I just did not have the inspiration to make another game, like make the same game again, basically. Which I think CN2 was already like pushing it with that. Because that was basically making a game that I had already made, putting a lot of time into it. So yeah. Alright, let me move on to talk about these stages individually. So something interesting about the way I picked the tile sets for these stages is that they're all picked from so this first one is from Noasis. So they're all picked from needle games that I found noteworthy, that had released since CN2. So there's sort of a common theme behind these stages. And Oasis is a game that I have a lot of respect for. I think it's one of the most uniquely designed needle games that have come out in a very long time. Like one of the few needle games that I feel almost invented a new style of design. Even though it's not really the design I personally enjoy playing. I feel like the guy had a clear vision of what he wanted to do, and he succeeded in making it. But other than that, I don't know really what to say about these first 3 floors. So I always find like the very first couple floors of each Crimson Needle game to be actually like the easiest ones to design. And you would think that maybe, oh, they're hard because now you have to sort of build expectations and all these things, but just making easy needle without like having the pressure to make it interesting just makes for something that's very easy to make. Also, pretty awkward sentence. But the way I see these floors is more like they're like a run up, you know. You're building momentum. You're building steam, and you're easing the player when you're playing this. You're getting eased into the game with just like comfortable, smooth needle that almost plays itself. So it's like if you're an experienced player, you can pretty much play these floors on autopilot and not die once. And that's how I want the game to start. But yeah, because of that, there's not going to be a whole lot to say about them, because you're not pushing any boundaries as the sign goes, and they're not really trying to do anything new. They're just acting like as a run-up, as a build-up, I guess. But then you get to the IF floors. And something to note here is that the difficulty of this game ramps up quickly. Like compared to Crimson Needle 1 and 2, it's like a very stark difference. These floors get like significantly harder, significantly quicker, I guess. So like I'd say some of the floors among these first 30 floors are like around the difficulty of like the 60s or 70s in Crimson Needle 2. And the reason I wanted to make these floors harder, let me lower the volume just slightly. So I guess I had two primary reasons, and one of those reasons is that since CN2 there has been, or like there's a constant just difficulty and skill inflation. So games are in general just getting harder, and people are getting better, and when they get better they demand harder games and so on. Which, you know, it sucks for new players, because it means that this game, for example, is just going to be way less accessible than I guess CN1 or CN2 was. But I think I mainly made these games for the community and like more veteran players. And the other reason is that I just don't have much interest in making easy stuff. So for me to even like have the motivation to open Game Maker and make stuff, I need to find inspiration, and like I want to try to do something innovative and try to do something that I haven't done before. And when you design easy stuff, that's just off the table. Like by nature, easy jumps cannot be complex, and thus they cannot be really like creative in any way that I can think of. But yeah, this stage uses the tiles from IF, and I try to sort of borrow the design style of Stonk's games. So I played the first stage of IF1, and I played IF2 from start to finish. And I think that's just genuinely one of the most impressive needle games that I played. And the thing that's impressive about it is really like just the maneuvers that Stonk makes. Like using only standard gimmicks, so like vines, water, platforms, and spikes. He creates these maneuvers that are actually unlike anything else in any other fan games. Just like making new stuff is so hard to do. Like you would think it's almost impossible. Like look at how limited your moveset is. Like you can double jump and you can move left and right. So how is it possible to create maneuvers that feel like you've never done them before, using no new gimmicks? no new physics or anything. So yeah, a lot of respect for IF 1 and 2. IF 1 looks good at least, I haven't played. But yeah, what I would try to, I guess, copy or go for with this stage was just making segments that play fast and that have a lot of weaving in them. I think that's best exemplified by this save, which is just like non-stop weaving, like just weaving left, right. Alright. But yeah, very, very pleased with how this stage turned out. I think it's like definitely easy enough for most beginners, while still presenting sort of interesting jumps and still feeling good for more experienced players, not just like some cakewalk you stomp. Yeah, I'm not gonna have too much to say about any of these early stages. I think I'll have way more to say when I get to 31. So I'm gonna move on. Yeah, this is the dandy stage. I really beat myself up for missing the opportunity to use, like, for each of these screens I could have used a different tile set, so one from each dandy game. Luckily Wolfie rectified that and did that in Vandal, but I still can't believe I missed that. That's really an obvious thing to do. But yeah, I'm trying to say something about each of these games that I've taken tile sets from. So the Dandy series is sort of I guess an imitation, or like very heavily inspired by the Uhuhu games. And I think the Uhuhu games were like really impressive needle games for their time. Like definitely, oh my god, definitely way ahead of their time. Like back in the days where almost no one tried to push any sort of limits or boundaries of needle. Like people just made the same crap over and over. Most needle games were just generic jumps, a lot of corridor games. And then you had the Uhuhu series, which were like every jump was different from the last. Like he never repeated the same jump twice. Used a lot of different spike configurations, a lot of different kinds of movement. So I have a lot of respect for those games. I don't think they've aged too well. They're like, there's always like some sort of annoying movements in them, and I feel like sometimes it's maybe putting, like the person who made them maybe put more effort into making jumps that look new and that look different than actually making jumps that feel different or that feel good. But the Dandy games are definitely like an improvement on the Uhuhu series. It's sort of like what the Uhuhu would be if it sort of was designed. Well, I mean, if it was designed today with like by someone more conscious of what feels good in needle, I think. Hope that didn't come across too insulting to the original. Like I said, a lot of respect for those games. Just don't think they hold up too well. And yeah, I sort of have tried to imitate Wolfie's style with these floors. So like a lot of sort of like, I don't know. I hope my curse is visible, but there's like sort of different kinds of spike configurations. And like way more mini spikes than I would normally use, because Wolfie uses a lot of mini spikes. Nothing off the 8 pixel grid though, which Wolfie does all the time. But yeah, not too much to say about this stage. But it's like, it's noticeable here already, like this save for example. This is a pretty hard save. And this is floor 9. Like That save would not be on floor 9 in, at least not in CN2. I think CN1, I mean that one had CN1 had some like pretty off difficulty wise screen, so maybe like floor 9 in CN1 was hard, I don't know, but overall like this game just ramps up much quicker in difficulty. Gonna move on. We got the Shiver stage next. And this is the second to last screen I made. So actually, like initially, I only had 20 floors at the start, and then you got to the hub, which is now 31. So that was floor 21 initially. Let me put this up. I really love this song with this background. It's like the pulsating background with the pulsating song. I find this stage very, very relaxing and comfortable. Where was I? Oh yeah, so I only had 20 floors initially, and then about 2 weeks before release, I realized that like, wow, I actually I feel like I really need another 10 floors. I still feel like the difficulty curve is too steep. So I wanna sort of flatten the curve a bit. So this is one of the new stages that I added. Just by the way, this is a pretty difficult stage. I don't know if it really helped flatten the difficulty curve, but at least it's sort of, I don't know, padded the content prior to 31. I think it's good that it's here. So yeah, Shiver, not a game I played myself. Watched videos of it. Like probably, if not the best collab game, then like easily top 3. Just like it's such a tight game, it seems to me. Like it feels like everyone who made a stage in that game knew what they were doing. They were competent designers, like their own idea of how they want their needle to play. And it's also obviously like a very good looking game. Plasma had his fingers all over that, so it's bound to look good. I don't know if Plasma made this background. I think the tiles were made by Inferno or Chatra. But yeah, very, very good looking stage. We experimented with a lot of different background colors for this one, and I think this is the one that we were most in agreement about, even though some of us, or I think primarily I wanted an orange background instead, but I don't think Plasma liked that too much. But this is a good compromise, really good looking stage. And yeah, in this stage I didn't really try to emulate any particular platforming styles with my design. But I think I had an idea at least that I wanted, because I looked at a video of Shiver and it seemed that there were, I don't know if it was the stage that used this tile set, but it seemed like it had like a bunch of generic jumps, named jumps used in sort of cool ways. I think at least I had an idea that I wanted to do that, but I don't know if it really panned out that way. And yeah, I just want to say, like, I looked at this stage the other day and I looked at these 3 screens. I'm like, I'm so proud of this stage actually. And like in the grand scheme of things, you probably, like most players, are gonna like, I mean, it's not that hard. You're gonna go through it and then it's probably pretty forgettable. There's nothing that really stands out. Like when I just look at it and I look at each individual jump, I feel like there's no filler here. Each jump is here for a reason, and each jump feels different and look different. And there's a lot of like horizontal movement mixed with vertical movements, and you're like going in all kinds of different directions. And there's a good balance also, I think, between jumps like, for example, say this one. Let's try to do that once at least, or not. it's not the greatest trying to do stuff like on command. But yes, jumps like that, which you do more intuitively. There's a good mix between those, and then jumps like this, which are more almost set-up based. So that was one of the jumps that I thought, I don't know. This is also more of a setup jump. Okay. But yeah, I'm very like proud of this stage actually. I think as far as like very regular Needle with little to no gimmicks, this is as good as I can do. And it's rare for me to feel that way, because usually when I look back at older games I made, like I'm either just bored with them, like disinterested, or I just spot a bunch of quote-unquote errors or things that I'd want to change. But it's very nice to look back at a stage and just feel like a year later and just feel completely content with it and happy. So yeah, very nice stage. Okay. Oh yeah. All right. This is the Explore the Mountain stage. So like making this stage, you wouldn't think, but it's like an actual nightmare. And I do not know how Dan Truck is the guy who made Explore the Mountains, and I do not know how he puts up with this fucking tile set. So this tile set has like, I don't know how many layers, but it has like blocks on different at different depths. So there are like layers of different tiles you have to piece together and switch between the layers. And then you have the blocks, which I don't know, there's like say 20 different blocks, and you have to like you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, you have to like assemble them together on yourself. So you have to take them apart into smaller pieces and assemble those pieces, like for edges and stuff. And I have had countless mistiling errors that I didn't spot, that Zero spotted when he tested. I just had to like retile stuff over and over. And like even now, like if you look at below where I'm standing, like this is a mistiling. This should have the blue edge on the block, which it doesn't. But yeah, I just remember like making this stage because of the tiling like alone was just extremely cumbersome and frustrating, and it just took so much longer than it would have taken if just by designing it alone. So yeah, I guess props to Dan Frog for putting up with that and probably working more efficiently with it than I could. But yeah, Explore the Mountains was a Needle game that came out a few years ago. So it was actually Dan Frog's first game, I think. And in my opinion, it's the Needle game that does the platform vine water style design the best out of any Needle game that I've seen. Like it's very innovative, very creative, lots of really cool pathing through the rooms, lots of really interesting jump designs, and it just feels like so well thought out and competent throughout, in my opinion. So that's a game that I have a lot of respect for. I think I can see people having an issue with this tile set because it is sort of, it's a bit busy for one thing, with the different layers of backgrounds and such. And it's also because it's dark and there's like stuff moving in the background. It's not ideal for visual clarity, but it also just, I don't know, it works in my opinion and looks really nice. I guess this stage is like sort of an introduction to platforms and water, and a little bit of vine jumping. But I wouldn't say it has like a clear theme, and it's definitely not trying to imitate dense design in mountains. I will say floor 15, I really love this floor. I think this first drop is it's weird to say this, but I think this short little drop is like one of the best drops that I've ever made. Oh shit. It's really elegant. Doesn't use a lot of assets, doesn't have a lot of spikes you have to weave around. Just a short drop that feels really good, feels really intuitive and smooth. And you actually feel like you're in control in midair, which is like my least favorite thing. My least favorite drops are long drops where it's more about muscle memory. You have to like learn to memorize a specific set of inputs. I feel like this drop, you're in control and you can adapt in midair. And I also really like this part. I don't think I've seen vines used this way before. But what I really like about this is that it looks so difficult. Yet it's so natural to do. You just kind of do it. Really like that. Also like this part at the top. But yeah, I'm not just gonna go through and like talk about the shit I like. But this is one of those floors during development that I just like. If I thought about the game, this floor might have popped up in my head. It's just like one of the things that I liked, and that can be sort of reassuring sometimes. Like, oh, well, I mean, at least I can sort of lean back on floor 15. Like, I know that's a good floor. I know I've accomplished something with this game. This is definitely one of those floors that I remember. All right. Yeah. Crimson Needle 2. I don't know if I should talk about Crimson Needle 2 as a game, or if I should save that for later. Probably want to think that one through a little bit before I talk about it. As opposed to just talking about it off the top of my head. It's a game that I'm still very, very proud of, and a game that I think, unlike Crimson Needle 1, like Crimson Needle 2, for sure holds up. It's still like a very competent needle game that I don't think has really been surpassed by other games in similar style. Like, I think the variety in CN2 is still unmatched. And I also think, like, visually it's probably, I don't know, I shouldn't say too much about it, but I thought it deserved recognition. And it's also like convenient using tiles that you have since before, you know. So that's probably the main reason why I had this tile set. But yeah, I guess the main gimmick of this stage is that I used mini blocks rather than regular blocks. And that might seem like a small thing, but I think almost every jump here is based around that. So like all of these jumps are things that you just straight up couldn't make with 32 by 32 pixel blocks. Some exceptions, I'm sure, but like for the most part, like for example, this part up here in the top middle, it's just like a unique series of movements that would not be possible with regular blocks. And I think, so I don't remember, I think this might have been the very first time, or close to the first time, that I actually designed with mini blocks. And like I very quickly realized just how much untapped potential they have. They're so underutilized. Like they're in the engine. Why are people almost never using mini blocks instead of normal blocks? Or like when they use mini blocks, they have this mix. So like they put mini blocks when a regular block doesn't fit, and it just looks bad. There's so much you can do with these. And I think I probably pulled off some sort of cool things in this stage. Like this part, for example, feels pretty good. Pretty cool. Yeah, like I said, not gonna go through jump by jump. But yeah, that's probably what I have to say about this stage for now. I want to talk about Crimson Wheel 2 at some point. Because I know a lot of people still hold that game to high regard. As do I. I think it's interesting. But yeah, I'm gonna move on for now. What's the key there? Okay. So this, in some people's view, this is where the game started going downhill, I guess. Because I guess this is like the first gimmick I introduced that actually wasn't used in CN2. So like the vines, platforms, and water, they've become such a standard part of Needle, they're not considered gimmicks anymore. But then when you use screen wrapping, suddenly it's a gimmick Needle game, maybe. I don't know, so I think some people think that way. There are some parts about this stage that I like, and some parts that I feel like I actually kind of failed. So one thing I don't like right off the bat, is the visuals. So this stage actually like uses the Masochist tile set, which was seen like 100 times in 100 different games, in 100 different color variations. And I don't know why I'm using them here. So this is like not a significant Needle game that I'm representing here. It's just a tile set I picked out of laziness, I suppose. And I don't even think at least this screen doesn't even look very good. Probably like the ugliest screen out of all of the first 30 floors. So that's one failure, I think. Another failure with this stage is in terms of what I wanted to accomplish. So my first idea was to like really go heavy on the screen wrapping. So I wanted to have like a lot of jumps that went back and forth through the borders, and I wanted to have a lot of gravity flipping. That it would be more puzzly, and you would have to figure out when to hit arrows and you know whether you were gonna be upside down or right side up when you pass through a certain part. And it I guess what turned out, first thing that I noticed is that it's pretty hard designing that way. But what I also noticed, more importantly, is that screen transition jumps are really not fun. They're like standard Needle jumps, but they're blind. So you just take like this jump. This is just a regular, like pretty boring jump, and you just make it hard by making it disoriented. So you don't really know where your kid are for like half of that jump. You have to figure out the inputs by looking at it more. And overall, just like it doesn't actually feel that good transitioning. So I had one segment on one of these screens, which I've since scrapped, which had like, I don't know how many, it had like 6 transitions within the span of 2 seconds or something. You're just like going back and forth through gravity arrows and like hitting vines and stuff. And it was just like, I remember Zero testing that, and it was pretty much unplayable for him. Like I knew how to do it. I made the segment. I had a chance to practice it. Like I sort of do it out of muscle memory. But he, like for someone new to just come across that and try to figure that out, it was like way too hard, and it was just a matter of building muscle memory. And I think, I mean, So I've done away with that, but still, like, there are a lot of, like, some of these, like that jump, that's okay because you have a lot of time to react. But a lot of these jumps are just, they're just boring jumps with padded difficulty through the screen transitions. So yeah, in that sense, not entirely happy about this stage. I don't think screen wrapping is really a gimmick with all that much potential. At least not for like interesting jump design. I do think that screen wrapping can be cool for having unusual pathing through screens and like making puzzle-like segments. But as far as like making needle that feels good, it's just not the right gimmick for that, I think. I couldn't make it really work anyways. So yeah, not too happy with this screen. A lot happier with this screen. And in particular, very happy with this save. This is possibly my favorite save out of all the first 30 floors. And it's not because I think it's all that clever. I don't think I really managed to make like the kind of elegant puzzle-like sort of like merry-go-round or whatever that I wanted to make. It was actually quite a struggle getting this to work, and the result is like a lot of has a lot of ham-fisted solutions to problems, I guess. But I just think this save just plays very nicely. I should not grind it. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. Just plays very nicely. The drop at the end is, I think, an excellent drop, which is also like extremely basic. Just you weaving around a single apple twice, back and forth, or up and down. And it just works. I don't know. Feels good. Also think this screen looks very interesting visually. It's like a very distinct character thanks to these long spike brackets in the middle. This screen is actually similar visually. You have like something eye-catching in the middle. This is actually something I could say something about, so which I think sometimes is underappreciated. What a long way it goes to have screens that look visually appealing, and not visually appealing thanks to their sort of the graphics, but because of the layouts of the screen. And you know, whether you like how do I put this? Like I guess the balance between like certain parts of the screen. This is a really clumsy way to say this, but sometimes I think it looks really nice when the obstacles are not evenly distributed, and the screen is like very asymmetric. And sometimes it looks nice when it is just a symmetric screen. And I don't know, there's just like many different ways to make screens feel completely different just by having different layouts. And this is something that I'm very conscious about when I'm designing stuff. I'm really trying to make each screen look different from each other. So we could even go back and like, for me on this screen, it's these water parts in the middle are like the most distinct features of this screen. They're like the most eye-catching thing, and they give this screen character that just makes it stand out from any other screen. Yeah, this screen has this thing on the right side, these pillars. This screen is a little bit more crowded, I guess. Not as nice looking, but whatever. But yeah, there are just many layers to needle design, and I think, I mean, the more you design, so I've made a lot of games, and the more games you make, the more you think about these things, and like you really put a serious effort into improving on them, and like actually like I'm really taking this serious as a part of what makes a screen good or not. Is how the screen looks. It's just like without looking at the jumps individually, but just looking at the screen by itself. So yeah, like the screen looks really cool. Looks like these are almost like boulders falling down. Almost looks like you just like you're taking a shot of something that there's actually a motion. Like someone has pressed pause, and if they were to press play, these things would start falling down. Yeah, I think so. Anyways, looks really nice. All right, but that is this stage. So I don't think this stage is a failure. I actually think this screen is also it's okay at least. But I just don't think the screen wrapping elements did much for any of these screens other than on this save. Besides adding sort of interesting pathing and making it a little bit of a puzzle, which is also cool. Like they're a break, or they're doing something different than the other screens. But I don't think they really accomplished as much as I thought I could when I started designing with the gimmick. So yeah, I always forget this stage even exists. I think this is the actual last stage that I made. So this stage, very sort of vaguely based on Nader's Neon games. So I received the tiles from Nader, but I guess the lines aren't from any of his games. I don't know if he's used these kinds of, if he's designed with this kind of line needle, but I did sort of quote unquote come up with that myself. So yeah, the style of this stage is not all too similar to Nader's Neon games, I think. But as those games go, I think they're like definitely some of the best needle in the category of needle that is smooth, and the kind of needle that I've already used this phrase, but it's needle that almost plays itself. So it's needle that's really just focused on feeling good, and I think making the player feel good too. So like, I think the Neon games make you feel like you're better than you actually are, because a lot of the jumps just look harder and look more precise when they're made with lines as opposed to with spikes. And yeah, I don't think anyone makes games of that style as well as Nader does. I will say though, I'm a bigger fan of his Neon 3 stuff when he started using gimmicks. I think that the final stage in that game was really excellent. But yeah, I know there was another game that used straight lines instead of like just, you know, lines that tilt, have the same. Fuck, I'm getting tired. Jesus Christ, how long have I been talking for? Like 50 minutes. Oh my fucking god. Okay. So normally with line needle games, they have the same dimensions as regular spikes, just that they're like parts of them are cut off. But so this is like such a basic thing, but just instead of having those kinds of lines, just have like straight vertical lines and like diagonal lines that have sort of a different angle than the normal line needle ones. And this is an idea I came up with just randomly. And then I know there was another line needle game where another guy also used the same thing, which looks really cool, interesting. Definitely takes the idea much further than I did in this game. But this is very similar to like discovering, just starting to design with mini blocks and seeing like this world of possibilities open up. Like you're so used to designing with certain assets, and then suddenly you're taking this new asset, and you just see like everything. It's so easy to just make new stuff, as opposed to when you're using the regular blocks and the regular spikes, and you like really have to push yourself to come up with something that feels like it hasn't been done before. And with these, it's like that just comes by itself. Like if you just put these anywhere, it's like it's gonna create a jump you haven't seen before. But of course, like I don't just want jumps that look different. I want jumps that play different. And I think I did a decent job with the stage. Like, there are definitely like some jumps here that just feel kind of new, kind of fresh. So overall, I think it's not like the most visually striking stage, but I think it's comfortable needle, or it's like it strikes a good balance between comfortable but also novel in a way where you can't just rush the jumps, which I think in like the Neon games, it's more like rush needle. You don't really have to think about where you're going. You're just doing jump after jump after jump. So this is not really like that in that way. I think for a lot of these jumps, you have to stop and sort of think about where you're going and how you're gonna approach something. But yeah, that's what I have to say about that. I just remember like the relief when I finished. I don't know which one of these 3 screens I made last. Like when I finished it and I knew like I had succeeded in making another 10 floors for like a very strict deadline. We were very pressed on time and I was stressed out of my mind. But I somehow pulled through and like made 10 actual good screens. Did well for the game. Alright. I'm like absolutely gonna stop this video after I've went through these first 30 floors. Let's see how brief I can be about these last 2 stages. Yeah, this stage based on a game that I made. I mean, leave it to me to like make 2 out of 10 stages based on my own games, which is actually I don't know, it's kind of dumb because there has been other well-deserving needle games that have come out. So I think, for example, it would have been fair to feature something that Wonderful has made. Maybe Kermit 3 sprites for one of these stages, and maybe also something that V has made. And I think a big oversight was actually not including sprites from one of Piece of Cheese's games, like his Jumper French, or I don't know what they're called. But I think those are like definitely some of the most impressive and most innovative needle games to come out, maybe ever. Very, very impressed with those games. But instead, I went with my own game here. I don't actually think I was happy with 50 Shades. which this is from, when it came out. So this is 50 Shades of Crimson, if I didn't say that already. It was maybe the first game where I started like playing around a little bit with gimmicks. I was definitely testing, and I was challenging myself, making stuff that I wasn't entirely comfortable with. And I think, I mean, the game holds up like somewhat well. Some of the stages are still fun, I think, whereas others are kind of a little annoying, probably. But I really like this tile set for all its simplicity. Like these, this color combination just does something for me. I'm trying to remember. Para had like a good word for this background, because it's not normal. Like it's not entirely white. It has like some silky qualities to it. I don't know. I don't remember what he called it, but I remember I enjoyed that. This is the first time in the game where I'm like, sort of, I'm going kind of hard with the needle, with the vine platform needle style. And like if this floor was in CN2, or if these floors rather, they would have been like 50s or 60s easily. But I think at this point, like people familiar with fan games are comfortable with these gimmicks, and this stuff just isn't that hard anymore. There's been a lot of games made in this style, and people have gotten good at it. Yeah, I'm not sure what to say about this stage. I like it. I especially actually like this first screen. It's like one of the most consistent screens after you've done it. This screen is a little cluttery, but has some cool jumps. Okay, let's move on. Last stage. Magnificent Stumble. So in this stage, I really try to just copy. Like I wanted these screens to feel like they could have been ripped straight out of Magnificent Stumble, because I think that's a style that's like actually well worth just trying to straight up imitate. It's maybe the needle game that I have the most respect for out of any of the ones featured here. I think so. For one thing, I feel like Hideo really came up with his own style for this game, like both visually, like it's simple visually, but it's so distinct, and it just makes everyone else look like clowns. Like people are bending over backwards, like making these elaborate tiles, and like having all these visual effects and like shit going on in the background. And then Hideo comes out with this game, and it pretty much looks better than all of those other games. And it's like a super basic flashlight effect, and it's got, you know, single colored tiles and standard spikes, like default spikes. So yeah, loving the visuals in Magnificent Stumble, as I think everyone else does. And it's also like, it's probably about as clear as visuals can be for Needle. Yeah, I don't know if I can think of a single tile set that's as easy to see your character on. It's really perfect. But yeah, I really try to copy his style with this design. It's kind of tricky, like when you're trying to copy someone's style, it's hard to pinpoint what it is that makes a game the way it is. Like you don't want to just copy the shallow aspects of it. Like, oh well, it has a lot of spikes that are, you know, pointing unusual directions, I guess, which is like true, I think, for Magnificent Stumble. Like, Hito loves using the flat side of the spikes, or like the bottom side of the spikes, I should say, as an obstacle. But it's, I don't really know. I don't really know what makes the design in that game so appealing. But I think I did a decent job at copying it, honestly. I think somehow these screens at least sort of feel like they could have been a Magnificent Stumble. And they sort of look like they could have been, although they're not, they don't look as good. They don't have the, like, I don't know, weird embellishments, like weird block configurations and shit that Hito uses. So yeah, I'm liking this screen, like how they play. But again, like, so so difficult. This save, I had to. It was really cool before, but it had to be nerfed. It had like way more weaving going on, like even more so than now. Like it's already like left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Fuck, I'm like actually out of energy for my brain to talk about this shit. So I'm gonna skip ahead, see if there's something to say here. Probably not. So I'm gonna do this. This is like one of 100 little nods to some of my earlier games. This game is this game is like very, I guess, self-referential and has a lot of references to my older games as well. Sometimes I like to think like it's almost some sort of contained universe that all my game worlds exist within. But who knows? Alright, so I'm gonna stop right there. And if I pick this up again, I'm gonna comment on well, I'm gonna comment on all the stages in the order that the letters spell out Maxinator in. So I'm gonna start with M, and then I'm gonna go with A, X, and so on. And I guess I'll do like 2 stages per session and per video or something. Just gotta try not to exhaust myself with it. Alright.